Berserk is a manga by Kentaro Muira that he has been writing and illustrating since 1989. Spread across over 41 volumes and 364 chapters, Berserk follows ex-mercenary Guts as he travels a dark fantasy world ridden with monsters and demons in hopes of seeking revenge. Guts is most recognizable from the 7-foot-long sword, the Dragon Slayer, that he wields to cut down humans and demons like butter. If there is a quiet character with a large sword in a show or a video game you're watching, they are no doubt inspired by Guts, like characters in Attack on Titan, Soul Calibur, Castlevania, Final Fantasy, Devil May Cry, Dark Souls, and Elden Ring, just to name a few. Berserk is also infamous for receiving one of the worst anime adaptations ever attempted, but we'll talk more about that later. I'm guessing this lack of a good anime is why most of you haven't heard of Berserk, and I didn't either until May 6, 2021, when Kentaro Muira passed away. This meant that Muira was never going to be able to finish the story he had been working on for almost 3 decades. The amount of outpour of love and sadness over this man's work struck a chord with me. For a few days, I saw just how much Berserk had meant to fans and how much Muira had influenced their lives. This was before I had watched Cowboy Bebop and would dive into the world of anime and manga, so instead of reading Berserk, I just sort of ignored it and moved on. Then I played Bloodborne, one of the many games to draw heavy inspiration from Berserk. When watching Bloodborne content, people would not shut up about how many Berserk references Bloodborne had. And I couldn't ignore it because Bloodborne had become my favorite game of all time. Then I played Dark Souls 1 and the same thing happened. And then I played Elden Ring and the same thing was happening. I said, you know what? Fine, I'll read Berserk, but it better be the best thing ever made. And it was. If you would have asked me when I first started reading Berserk if I thought Guts' story would conclude with him dying, I would have said yes. Let me explain. Before reading Berserk, I pictured Guts as a dude with a troubled past who goes around saving people and killing demons because it's the right thing to do. And the first half of that was true. Guts was born out of the corpse of his mother hanging dead on a tree. A fetus believed to be dead, lying in a pool of blood and muck. He was found by a band of mercenaries, led by a man named Gambino. Guts was taken in by Gambino's wife, Shishu. When she died 3 years later from the plague, Gambino took Guts in, but not as a son, but as a worker. He cared a little about Guts or his well-being. He didn't even give Guts a sword his size, but one so big that most grown men could not properly wield it. The rest of his childhood only got worse from there, until one day he meets another mercenary group called the Band of the Hawk, led by a man named Griffith. The band all bring Guts back to reality, and slowly but surely, he finds another meaning to life than killing. One day it all comes crashing down on him and he goes back to his old self, wandering from place to place, killing demons, but not to help others. Whenever he swings his sword, he does so with a massive grin on his face. He mercilessly kills anything in his way and will even resort to using children as hostages to achieve his goal. At the beginning of Berserk, Guts is a horrible person driven only by revenge. But underneath all that armor and scars, he's just a scared little boy who thinks that if he were to become attached to anybody, they would either leave him or betray him. Deep down, he still wants to help people because Guts is really bad at being selfish. While he constantly says things like, I couldn't care less, when it comes down to it, he cares enough to go out of his way to save people. And if you're familiar with Berserk or manga at all, you probably have seen this panel once or twice. This panel appears in chapter 8 after Guts kills a little girl's father who turned himself into a demon. In doing so, everything the little girl knew came crashing down on her. She blames Guts out of blind rage, saying that everything that happened went wrong was his fault, and she swears to kill him herself one day. Guts simply replies, fine, I'm ready when you are. When Puck the elf chases back after him, he sees Guts on the verge of tears before he quickly turns away as to not show any weakness. Some say the opening arc of Berserk is boring, and some say that you should skip it entirely. I could not disagree more. It is known that Muira didn't really have anything else planned out for the story of Guts and just wanted to draw cool stuff. I mean, can you really blame him? But eventually, he realized that things needed to change, and so began the true story of Berserk. There's a quote they found on Twitter one day, and it says as follows: the reason Berserk works so well is because it was never about trauma, it was about healing. Again, if you had asked me when I first started reading Berserk, would Guts die at the end? I would have said yes. Characters like Guts, those who haven't lived the best lives and seen killing as the only thing to live for, don't always see a happy ending. Especially anti-heroes who do bad things, even if their intentions are good, but usually, by the end of the story, their moral compass is too far gone to keep on living. Guts sort of falls into that category. He's cursed with a sacrificial mark, meaning that every single night, demons will try to kill him and he has to fend them off. He usually can't sleep in a house or near other people because everything around him will get eaten or destroyed. That doesn't seem like a life worth living, but with his curse, Guts is destined to spend eternity in hell if he dies. But things start to change for him and Berserk as a whole. Guts starts accepting people, but not because he wants to, but because he has to. Slowly but surely, Berserk no longer becomes a story about an angry man seeking revenge. It becomes a story about broken people banding together and overcoming their past to secure a better future. Guts becomes the unlikely leader of his new family. He becomes what the Band of the Hawk was once to him, an anchor back to reality. And he shows them a reason to live other than killing. I know that Berserk will never get a true ending, but I think that if it did, Guts would have found a happy ending. After Kentaro Muira had died, Dark Horse published a blog post and the team who worked on Berserk got to say what they wanted to about their experiences with Muira and Berserk. The editor, Carl Horn, said, "I went to open a copy of Berserk just now, and I pictured for a moment that every page was blank, to remind myself that that's how each one of Berserk's thousands upon thousands of pages had begun." Despite going on for 30 years, Berserk only has 364 chapters, when something like One Piece has been going on for 20, but has over 1,000 chapters. Sometimes only 3 Berserk chapters would come out every year, but this is all because Muira was a perfectionist. He wanted to make sure that every single little panel was as detailed as possible. His art style is unmatched because of just how jaw-dropping everything looks, and Muira knew it. He loves to make these drawings that are actually tiny but yet feel so massive. If that be a dragon perched up on top of a castle or a grand metropolis with towering buildings. Back when the manga industry switched over to digital drawing, which is much more convenient than pencil and paper, Kentaro Muira followed suit. Instead of his work output getting faster like other mangakas, it became slower, because he would go pixel by pixel to make sure everything was literally pixel perfect. It almost feels like a crime to read Berserk, because you quickly go over a panel that probably took multiple hours of sheer dedication to draw. Even the ones that didn't feel just as, if not more impactful. Muira is a mastermind when it comes to conveying people and the situations that they find themselves in. Take these 2 pages for example. When Guts begins to leave the band behind, Casca sees him walking away. She tries to say something but is too choked up and nothing comes out of her mouth. She looks away for a second, as if to question whether she should or not, as he keeps going further and further away. She turns around and shouts out Guts' name. He stops for a second and keeps walking, without looking back, out of view from the rest of the band. Muira can make the most minute facial expressions say more than any speech bubble or dialogue box possibly can. Of course though, you can't forget what Kentaro Muira was best at displaying. Guts going berserk. I know I just talked up a storm saying how Guts will brutally murder anybody who gets in his way and he's a bad person. Well, I never said he didn't look cool as can be when doing it. What's so special about Guts is that he isn't part demon. He doesn't have magic. He doesn't have some souped up sword, sort of. He's able to absolutely tear through demons just because he's pissed. When you see Guts' eyes light up and he smiles, that's when the bad guy knows they messed up. There's a group of characters that everybody knows as the ultimate cool guys, because they do their best work when they're angry. Master Chief, Doomslayer, John Wick, Kratos, and if Berserk were more mainstream, I guarantee you Guts would be on that list. Not just because he just swings a big sword and wins, it's because he actually has strategy. Whenever he's fighting, you get little thought bubbles of him deciding when to swing, dodge, be offensive, or defensive. Berserk is more gory, violent, bloody, whatever adjective you want to use, than any TV show, movie, or video game that I have ever played. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, that I cannot show you because this video will get taken down. Let's just say that Berserk does not hold back on any details. But this is one of the many reasons why Berserk hasn't had a good anime adaptation. It's no coincidence that it's not until after a good anime based off a manga comes out that does it explode in popularity. Manga can be expensive, and if you want to read all of Berserk legally, you're going to have to cough up a whopping $615. Most people are not willing to spend that much money or sit down and actually read something. It's much easier to pay for a streaming service and watch everything animated. With Berserk, it's not that simple though. As I mentioned earlier, Berserk isn't your typical Shonen Jump anime. It's extremely dark and graphic, meaning you immediately get rid of the largest audience of people who watch anime. This goes hand in hand with reason 2. Muira's drawings are far more detailed than anything the typical anime's budget can handle. Most large corporations would rather spend that budget on something that would appeal to everybody, not just a niche audience. This results in one of two things. The first being the first attempt at a Berserk anime, titled Berserk or nicknamed Berserk 97. As the nickname suggests, Berserk 97 came out all the way back in 1997. It was animated by OLM, the people who did the original Pokemon anime. Berserk 97 is the most faithful out of all the anime adaptations and is genuinely really good. It only ever went up to the second arc though, because after that there was no content to animate. Even if there was, I doubt OLM would have wanted to make a second season. You could tell that they were very thin on budget and had to rely on a watered down art style. They also had to cut out a lot of the big battles in order not to go bankrupt. The mood of 97 is very different from something you expect out of Berserk. It is very chill and relaxing with the music playing a huge role. All of the songs except one in this video are from Berserk 97. I don't know, I like it. It's a good anime to just relax with. We wouldn't get another attempt until 2012 with the Berserk Golden Age trilogy. These were 3 movies released from 2012 to 2013 that spanned the events of the second arc. For the most part, these are actually really enjoyable as well. Even though with a decent sized budget, the studio had to resort to 3D CGI, which usually ends in disaster. In the first movie, it almost did because the 3D animation isn't amazing, but it got the job done. The second and third movies, on the other hand, have some of the best CGI animation ever. They still skip some parts, but for the most part, they are really faithful to the original. You can find them all on Netflix, and they're a good watch if you're a Berserk fan. Now for the moment a lot of you have been waiting for me to talk about. Berserk 2016 is a crime against humanity that should have never come out. I don't think I have to tell you what's wrong about this, but I will anyway. As I mentioned earlier, 3D anime is not very well liked by anybody. The industry has been moving towards 3D for a while now, and it makes sense why. 3D animation is much cheaper to produce because you don't have to redraw every single little thing just to make the simplest movements. The Berserk movies were a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence of 3D anime going right, because almost every other anime that has attempted it has turned out less than stellar. But with Berserk 2016, I don't think you could have made it worse if you had tried. Everything just looks so unbelievably bad. I think that a PS2 game is giving it too much credit. It's not like the actual animation is good either, because everything is so stiff. It looks like those crappy 2000s bowling animations. There was some 2D animation in the intro, and it looks seriously great. Then it cuts to 3D, and there's an unbelievable drop in quality. It almost feels like false advertising. Even if you somehow ignore the animation, then it doesn't get much better. There's so much cut out that somehow ruins the story. They completely skip the first 2 arcs and tell them only in 1 episode. I can't really say that much about Berserk 2016 other than not to watch it, even if you are a huge Berserk fan, because it tries nothing harder than to insult you. It's nothing more than a missed opportunity to share one of the best stories ever told with a wider audience. But there is still hope yet. When Kentaro Muira had died, Berserk got a ton of new fans from people just talking about it. It's probably more popular than it ever was now. So if there are going to be negotiations for a new anime adaptation, it's probably going on right now. If you want those negotiations to go well, now is the perfect time. The last volume of Berserk in paperback is up for pre-order in the US right now. You can pre-order it on Amazon or even Barnes & Nobles if you want. Companies love pre-orders more than normal sales because they see that as people willing to buy something before it even comes out. So if a lot of people pre-order Berserk, then they will see this as people are really interested in Berserk, possibly even greenlight a new anime. So support the crap out of Berserk, even if you don't care about an anime or for the legacy that Kentaro Muira had left behind, because it's our job to carry it on now.